All right. I want to go ahead and start with some quick high-level introductions of the project management team. My name is Trevor Williams. I'm the project director for the Pathways to Success project and also the Youth Services Administrator for the Division of Child Welfare with the Colorado Department of Human Services. So that's the state level. Lene?
Hi, I'm Lene Davis. I'm the lead evaluator for the Pathways to Success initiative, and I'm with the Center for Policy Research based here in Denver. We're a nonprofit research and evaluation firm.
Hi, and I'm Denise McHugh, and I'm the Pathways Project Manager at Spark Community Foundation. And I also want to introduce Drake Clausen, who is working with me, and he will be doing the technology and overall helping with logistics today. And in the future, don't be surprised if you receive emails from Drake rather than myself all the time. So Drake, do you want to show yourself?
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Drake. And just as Denise said, I will kind of be helping out with some of the behind the scenes stuff. So yeah, nice to meet everybody.
Awesome. And Jeff?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Romero. I'm with the Division of Child Welfare, and my involvement in Pathways is supporting navigators in implementing the coaching approach, which you'll hear more about later.
All right. And Derek?
Saving the best for last. No, just kidding.
Absolutely.
My name is Derek Blake, and according to the slide, I'm the Chiefy Administrator, which means I got a promotion. So I've got that going for me today. But I work with Division of Child Welfare, and I oversee all the Chiefy programs for the state. So my involvement is now that we are integrating into Chiefy, I am here. So thank you all for being here.
So the agenda for today, we did just want to have that moment of welcome and celebration for everyone who was involved. The agenda is up on the screen. We're going to do an overview of Pathways and YARH, which stands for Youth at Risk of Homelessness Project. We're going to talk about phase 2, phase 3, and the evaluations, have a youth panel, then a breakout group, and then we'll close and have next steps. For anyone who may have joined, because there were a few more, you do have an opportunity to receive 2 training hours for your participation today. There's a link in the chat that you need to fill out in order to obtain those precious training hours that we all desperately need this far into the year. So why don't we go ahead and go to the next slide. So how all of this began, why don't we go ahead and hop to the next slide. So YARH represents a whole lot of different parts of the country. As you can see on this slide, multiple states were represented in the original 16 grants. These grants were issued for a planning phase to a number of different agencies. Primarily, it was state agencies, nonprofit, and direct county departments of human services in places that are state supervised, county administered. There was a whole lot of work that was done. This represents a planning grant and a discretionary grant at the Children's Bureau. They issue these to help create learning labs effectively and build evidence. And that's what YARH was about. YARH was all about how do we build evidence around, how do we collectively as a nation build evidence to support older youth who are involved with child welfare and prevent homelessness. There were a lot of grantees going through in phase 1. There were, I believe, six states or 6 locales that were granted phase 2 grants. Those were issued so that folks could begin implementation and do formative evaluation, start building evidence, and see where things could get and how much evidence could be built up. And I'm not using my words well because I've been in a lot of meetings already today, so my brain is no longer functional. We are, as I said, the only site of those original 16 who's made it to the point where we're starting a summative evaluation. The other 6 sites are being given opportunities to continue building evidence. So saying that we're the only ones still involved in YARH3 is inaccurate, that we are the only ones actively moving forward with a summative evaluation. This is a really, really big deal. This gives us the opportunity to prove whether or not the Pathways to Success model works and whether or not it makes a substantial difference compared to business as usual for youth. And these evaluations are expensive and hard to come by, so we're very excited. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So as we previously mentioned, there are 3 phases, and this slide just does a quick overview of what those first 3 phases were. Not going to spend a bucket load of time here. So phase 1 was all about identifying the target populations, describing what the needs are, and building what was a proposed comprehensive service model. Phase 2 was about doing initial implementation and conducting formative evaluation testing. So really looking at, does this do what we think it does, at least on the surface? And is this something that we can measure? Can we actually build the real evidence from this? So the formative evaluation gives us a good sense of whether or not we have enough to move forward with the summative evaluation. The summative final phase 3 evaluations is what is phase 3. So that's what we're moving into with phase 3 and all the work that's being done between both the business as usual sites and the sites who are going to be actively implementing the Pathways intervention as part of their Chafee programs. Lene is going to talk a whole lot about the evaluation in just a bit. So why don't we go ahead and hop to the next slide. So Pathways is all about coach-like engagement. And while Mr. Romero is going to talk in detail about what coach-like engagement actually means, what we're hoping to get from it is people who are working alongside youth in using a coaching model, while utilizing tools and resources available in their community to specifically achieve the youth's goals. While many people work in a collaborative way with youth, this is a specific model of youth engagement when we say coach-like engagement. So it's not just meeting a youth where they're at. There's an explicit written model on how this work is done. Those navigators are using all of those tools in that second ring in order to achieve the 5 primary pathways. So when we say pathways to success, that outer ring, those are the 5 pathways. So health and well-being, housing, education, permanency, and employment. This is taken from another model that is totally dodging my mind at the moment, but this is a super specific model, all focused around the coach-like engagement being engaged in by the navigator. And like I said, Jeff is going to talk about that in just a couple of slides. I do want to mention the flex funds because that is something that's super specific in this model, is a specific call out for flex funds and maintaining the availability of flex funds for youth and making sure those are always available. So that's a tool that I just have to mention because that's something that's super specific to Pathways and is in this second. The rest can be similar at times to typical, aside from the coach-like engagement. Why don't we go to the next slide? Not going to spend too much time on this slide. This is just the demonstration that there is a flow, there is a model to this. This flow chart was created in partnership with all of the sites during phase 2, and this was a product from phase 2, walking through an engagement, active, and community transition phase. This is the model visually. as it's represented. So more than anything, we just want to make sure that people know that this is, there is a model. It does flow through a specific set of activities, hopefully resulting in successful transition to adulthood and improved outcomes, which we believe will happen. I really want to move through this quickly so that we can get to the next slide, so that Jeff can talk about coach-like engagement, which is really the heart of this model. So Jeff, do you want to go ahead and pick it up?
Absolutely, thank you. Trevor, I would love to share in detail what our coaching model is about, but that's a multi-day training, and I have been warned that we have 2 hours together today and was told to bottom line it. So here's my attempt to bottom line. Glad you're all sitting down. Coaching is the intervention as it relates to the Pathways demonstration program. The coaching model our approach is based on is coactive, which is often referred to as CTI. The CTI comes from the active word. Coactive has been around for over 25 years and is the one internationally recognized coaching certification program. The coactive model builds upon the principle that everyone is continually moving on a journey of transformation, and that the coachee, youth in this scenario, is the expert on his or her life. And as many of you know, this is a topic I get pretty passionate about. So in short, coaching is a process that starts with a designed alliance, as each relationship is unique. It builds upon values, knowing that values change while exploring what is truly important to us. And some key principles to this approach include: it's an ongoing relationship, it's forward thinking, it's action oriented, and each session ends with a challenge that then serves as a starting point for the next meeting. So through Pathways, and as a requirement of Pathways, as you've heard of the different phases we're in, and as a continued learning opportunities, navigators complete an engaging youth in a coach-like way training. So it is a multi-day training in which these skills are practiced. Pathways navigators and supervisors are also part of cohorts that meet on a monthly basis to experience coaching, as coaches, as coachees, and observers. And we debrief each and every single call. And that really allows us to do a deep dive in the various skills that are associated with coaching. And I really want to highlight, it is one thing to attend a training, it is another thing to learn through experience, through that experience of yourself and of others, the vulnerability, the trust. And we really have this handy dandy manual that serves as a reference. And again, experience is a wonderful teacher. Did I do okay at bottom lining? Okay.
Alrighty. So Pathways is uniquely youth-led. As I already said, it provides flexible support to make sure youth have their immediate needs met. When we were looking at the initial flow chart, there was that engagement phase. We make sure that there's money set aside and available to youth to resolve immediate problems and solve issues as they come up. So budgets are designed with a specific eye towards ensuring that there are flex funds available to youth, while intentionally removing any bureaucratic obstacles or barriers to navigators and the workers acting as the navigators as we go into the Chafee programs, to be able to provide those funds to youth directly. Youth navigators are working with the youth specifically to build skills in a really active weekly way. as Jeff just talked about in his beautiful high-level overview. You did a great job there. It's working with the youth based on what the youth's goals are, what their hopes and dreams are. You know, we think about our every day, from the moment that we wake up to the moment that we go to sleep. We have the things that we hope for, that we desire, and we want the people that we're around to support those activities. And the navigator is doing that work with the youth through coach-like engagement, while helping them build those meaningful skills on a regular basis. So the skill building is not just in the work that's being done, but it's also the regular nature in which it's being done, and being done using that that designed alliance that comes with the coaching model. And most importantly, in my mind, is working with the youth to set achievable goals with actionable steps. So there are specific goals that are set with the youth. They are the youth's goals, not necessarily the system's goals. So they have an opportunity to say, this is what I want from my life, with my life, without being told, no, that's the wrong goal. Or we really need the goal to be this. Those goals then form the underpinning for all of the work that gets done as it relates to skills and the direct support that gets provided, how it's provided, where it's provided, and when it's provided. Why don't we go ahead and hop to the next slide? So, questions about YARH and or the Pathways intervention as it stands right now. Understanding there is an entire training, as Jeff said, and there are more trainings to come.
So I've been keeping an eye on the chat. I haven't seen any questions come through. It turns out you were so informative that nothing came to mind for folks. There was one more really nice celebratory message though that I'll read from Bob that says, "This will change the reality of how young people are served nationwide." So kudos to everyone to making it happen.
Thank you, Bob. I know many people in this group, and I am shocked that there aren't questions. It's okay if you really don't have any, but it's okay to have them as well.
I have a question. Does anybody have any story about the impact of their participation in this, whether they were one of the young people being served, or whether you were serving a young person, you were coaching them?
Yes, we did focus groups, and Lene has quotes abound that she uses from those focus groups. Lene, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we a couple of different things with the focus groups. We have a research brief that we completed, and we'll put the link to our website where all the publications from the Pathways evaluations are, you can find them. And so there's a whole brief on the youth participants and what they said about their experiences in participating in Pathways. And then we'll also have a youth panel coming up where that we will have youth share their experience with the Pathways and working with their navigator. But in general, you know, we had some really fantastic quotes around how the navigators walked alongside the youth to help them achieve goals that they wanted to achieve. It was not just another professional in their life telling them what they needed to do, but they felt empowered to kind of make decisions for themselves and be supported in those decisions along, you know, achieving specific goals that were related to those 5 key outcome areas. So, you know, there was a lot of very positive comments around the relationships between the navigators and the youth and how the youth experienced that, you know, the work that they did with those navigators.
Awesome. And we're going to hear from a couple of the navigators and youth in a little bit too, as part of the youth panel. Any other question folks have before we
I have another one.
go ahead?
You know me, I'm not shy.
Yeah.
Listen, so, okay, riddle me this. This has been going on since 2008. That is 13 years. How did that happen with everybody in Colorado? Why did you buy into it? What's the magic?
Trevor, do you want to answer that, or you want me to start?
No, I'm gonna let you start primarily.
Just stirring the
because-
pot.
Yeah, you've been involved a lot longer than I have.
I would say that from the beginning, there was buy-in from a cross section of key partners, not just state agencies and child welfare, but ride providers were at the table, youth were at the table, and all the counties, and everyone had some very specific goals and a very unique perspective on how to achieve those goals. And I believe that because everyone was at the table from the beginning, having that buy-in with those partners was key, which kind of set this up for success, in my mind, is what I saw. Trevor.
And, I think, I was a caseworker for a long time working with this population, and I worked at a county for a very long time. And when I came into this position and learned about this program and really started to understand the work that it's doing and how it was doing it, I became very excited about an opportunity to create meaningful systemic change for a population that unfortunately has been too often viewed as a population that's not a priority for child welfare, which always made me really, really sad, to be honest. And as a result, the population was frequently served in a way that was a little bit more we have to, instead of it's a moral imperative and a good and within the purview of child welfare. So it's a model that is designed to build on the strengths that already exist in Colorado. It's a model that treats young people involved with child welfare like humans instead of like cases, and it structures it in such a way that can never be pushed aside for expediency or simplicity in the system, which too often happens. So that's the Kool-Aid I drank, and it's good Kool-Aid from my perspective. So we do have to hop to the next slide, and I have to give it to Lene. Thank you for the questions, Bob. So Lene, evaluation.
Thanks, Trevor. So today, my portion of this presentation is going to focus on 3 primary objectives. I'm going to introduce the evaluation team and our evaluation partners. And then I'm going to spend some time reviewing how we've moved from phase 1 to phase 2 and now into phase 3, and look at some of those short-term outcomes that we've achieved, which has kind of led us to where we are today. And then finally, I'm going to spend some time talking about phase 3 and what you all can expect from phase 3. I know there's a lot of questions that we've been fielding throughout the course of this, the last many months, years, to onboard everyone and get to the point that we are today. So I want to thank everybody for your patience as we have kind of, endured a pandemic, and on top of that, attempted to implement get to the point where we can implement summative evaluation. Next slide, Drake. So first, I want to introduce the evaluation team for phase 3. These are people that you may get to know, the CPR crew and particularly very well, because we'll be your local evaluation partner with the Center for Policy Research. I'll be the lead evaluator for CPR. I've led this, I've been involved with Pathways since phase 1 many years ago. And I'll be supported by 2 researchers at CPR. So Savannah, do you want to introduce yourself? Is Savannah on?
I'm here. Hi, I'm Savannah Madiash. I've been working with the Center for Policy Research for a couple years. So I got into Pathways at around phase 2, and I can be sort of your go-to person for those of you who are going to be the treatment group sites in particular, but also for some of the comparison sites, there's a little bit of data entry. The system that we use is called the Pathways Management Information System, and I will be running point on those issues for you.
And hi, everyone. You just heard me chime in. I'm Hillary. I was on chat monitoring duty. But yes, I'm a research assistant at the Center for Policy Research, and I will be a point person for technical assistance for the evaluation and supporting Lene and the team on that.
Thank you, ladies. And then Mathematica is a national research firm, and they are the primary evaluation partner. They are conducting the summative evaluation under a cooperative agreement with OPRI, which is the Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And so they, while they have a very important role here, you may not have so much direct contact with them, but I want to introduce a couple of senior researchers at Mathematica who are on the call today, and they can say a few words. Andrew, are you out there?
I'm here. Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew Berwick. I am one of the leaders of the team at Mathematica that will be working on the summative evaluation. And we have had the privilege of working with the team here in Colorado throughout the YARH phases, providing technical assistance and supporting the team in defining the model and conducting the formative evaluation. And we're really thrilled to be continuing in this partnership and working with everyone in Colorado for a successful summative evaluation of the intervention. And I just want to say from a personal note, Mathematica is a national firm, but I am based here in Colorado, so I'm especially happy to see Pathways team moving forward through this part of the evaluation. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Andrew. And then we have Melissa Thomas with us, also known as Missy. We can't hear you, Missy. Uh-oh.
I was double muted. Sorry about
There
that.
you are.
I'm trying not to do that anymore. You think I would know by now, but hi everyone, and thank you, Lene. As Lene said, my name is Melissa Thomas, but please feel free to call me Missy. I am the survey director for the evaluation, for the national evaluation. And I'm very excited to be here with you all today, and I really look forward to working with you. You all will play a key role in the evaluation and helping to enroll youth into the study and also facilitate the administration of the youth survey. I know you're going to have a lot of questions about that, and I'm happy to answer those at our data collection training, which will be held in June. So just to let you all know, we'll have a few dates in June available. You only need to sign up for one, but we will have a few dates available, and we'll be sending the invitations for those trainings out in a couple of weeks. Those invitations will come from Mathematica, so just be on the lookout for that. And then we'll give you a lot of more information about the study and the tasks involved in June. But looking forward to working with you all. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Missy. Next slide, Drake. So to start off with, way back in phase 1, the primary goal was to build evidence to support an intervention, develop an intervention that achieves specific outcomes related to our 5 key outcome areas. But our primary target population was youth at risk of homelessness. So how do we identify youth who are at increased risk of homelessness? And so in phase 1, we piloted, and in phase 2, we implemented a risk screen based on risk factors for youth that we know increase their risk of becoming homeless. So we developed this screening tool. You all will be implementing this in phase 3, and that's how we're going to continue to identify youth who are at increased risk of homelessness, and then we'll enroll them in our study. In phase 2, we identified 128 youth in our sites, collaborative sites, who had at least one, but most often had many more than one risk factors. On average, our youth had 5 risk factors. and with a range from 1 to 10. And some of the most commonly cited risk factors among the population of youth that we served, they had experienced homelessness from running away from home, experienced homelessness because of family violence, experienced homelessness because they had spent time in jail prior to the age of 18, which is a risk factor, or they've used a shelter or are literally homeless, or had received housing assistance. Again, this is the same 12-item screening tool that we'll be implementing in phase 3. And that's how we will enroll our youth identify our youth to enroll in the study. Next slide. So the goal of the YARH grants, again, was to build the evidence base of programs that achieve specific outcomes under those 5 key outcome areas. Those were outlined by the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness. Those outcome areas are education, employment, permanency, well-being, and then, of course, housing. And based on data collected during YARH 2, our Pathways youth showed improvement in all 5 of those outcome areas that we measured. And because of those outcomes that we achieved in phase 2, Colorado was awarded the summative evaluation to evaluate the Pathways program through a quasi-experimental research design, which you are all part of. Next slide. So before reviewing those outcomes that we found in phase 2, I wanted to first provide some information on the level of engagement of youth in our Pathways intervention that led to those better outcomes. We found in phase 2 that youth who are highly engaged with their Pathways navigator, those that set goals and then ultimately achieve those goals, they graduate or complete the program, complete the Pathways intervention. They showed improvements in those 5 key outcome areas. Graduation criteria for our program was established as part of the formative evaluation in phase 2. And that was developed very collaboratively, like a lot of, all of the Pathways model itself was. We had input from youth participants, former participants. We had input from our navigators and also project staff and other key agencies. And we developed a checklist of criteria with those key people. Our goals were established. Our goals were an established criteria later in the intervention, and youth worked with their navigator to achieve those goals. So we have graduation criteria, and over half of our youth graduated from Pathways. And we also have a very high proportion of youth who set and then achieved their goals. And in our follow-up interviews, nearly all of the youth, 95% of those youth felt like they achieved those goals. So not only engaging with their navigator, but engaging to create goals, achieve goals, and complete the program is the level of engagement that we're hoping to achieve in phase 3, and that we'll be monitoring through these fidelity technical assistance calls with the evaluation team. Next slide. So our education outcomes improved during Pathways between enrollment and follow-up. And when I'm talking about follow-up, that's 12 months post-enrollment. We did telephone surveys with youth and asked them a series of questions on our follow-up survey. And so the follow-up information that I'm sharing with you is based on those telephone interviews conducted with youth participants. So we saw an increase in the proportion of younger youth who were graduating high school at much higher rates compared to enrollment. We saw older youth are returning to school at a higher rate. And then we saw an increase in the percent of youth who were graduating from high school, from 23% at baseline to 36% at follow-up. Next slide. So a primary goal of Pathways was obviously to reduce or prevent homelessness and create safe and stable housing over the long term for those youth aging out of the foster care system. And our evaluation team had several measures of safe and stable housing. We looked at living arrangements, the number of moves in the previous 12 months, and then a reduction in homelessness. The reduction in unstable housing and homelessness went from 37% down to 10% at follow-up. And then of those 10% who reported unstably housed. Only one youth at that point was literally homeless. The remaining were living in a shelter or couch surfing. But you can see that a large proportion of our youth found a place to live on their own. So at enrollment, only 10% of our youth were living in a place on their own. And then at 12 months follow-up, over half of our youth that we talked with had a place of their own. Next slide. So economic security and employment was also a primary outcome that we looked at. The percent of youth employed either full or part-time at 12 months stood at 59%. Additionally, the percent of youth employed full-time jumped 10% at follow-up. And then the average monthly incomes, while they remained pretty low, those youth who received Pathways services, their average monthly income jumped an average of $425 a month. From $627 was their average monthly income up to over $1,052 per month. So still low, but they had a significant improvement in earnings. And then the percent of youth who had a checking account jumped from 44% at baseline to 70% at follow-up. And also we saw a significant increase in the proportion of youth with the savings account. And then finally, more than half the youth who participated in Pathways reported feeling very prepared to manage their money following participation in Pathways. Next. So permanency or relational permanency is also a primary outcome. So after participating in Pathways, youth reported an increase in the number of permanent supportive adults in their lives. And they also report an increase in the frequency of monthly contact with those supportive adults. Next slide. And then we saw improvements in health and well-being outcomes for youth who participated in Pathways. We asked youth at baseline and then again at that 12-month follow-up a series of questions on a readiness for independence scale. One question asked youth how prepared they felt to arrange for their own health care. We found a 21% jump in the proportion of youth reporting that they felt very prepared. And we saw a slight reduction in the proportion of youth who reported feeling not at all prepared. And then we also asked youth if they had medical coverage. Around 90% of the youth we spoke with at follow-up had, in fact, medical coverage. Next slide. So for phase 3, moving into what to expect, the summative evaluation, when you hear me say summative evaluation, it's just a fancy word for an impact evaluation. So I just want you all to get used to familiar with the summative evaluation, but that really just means what we're doing is we're comparing the youth in our intervention group, the youth who get Pathways services with those who receive CHAPI services. How does a summative evaluation different from a formative evaluation? So the formative evaluation was phase 2, and those are the findings that we just went through. And go to the next slide, Drake. So a formative evaluation, it occurs during program development. So we developed the model, the Pathways model. We had some key research questions we hoped to answer, and we had some expectations for what we hoped to see. And we wanted to determine whether the program is feasible and appropriate. And sometimes a formative evaluation might include a comparison group. Our formative evaluation did not in phase 2. We looked at outcomes achieved at that 12-month follow-up period of time. So moving into the summative evaluation, now that we have this program model designed, which is Pathways, we have fidelity measures. We want to make sure that it's implemented as we've designed it. And that's what we're going to help the intervention sites make sure that it's implemented to fidelity. And then we have our comparison group. We have our great CHAPI programs that are participating who will be identifying youth to enroll in the study. And those youth will continue to receive services, CHAPI services that they've always been provided or been able to be provided to in our comparison sites. Next slide. So the summative evaluation is going to look at those longer term outcomes from various sources and compare those outcomes with youth receiving CHAPI services in those comparison sites. So both the intervention and comparison sites are equally important to the importance of this research study. The evaluation team will be monitoring a variety of elements as we begin to enroll and serve youth in the study. primarily, we'll be ensuring that the services in our intervention sites are being provided to fidelity as we have designed them, and making sure that they're consistently getting those services. We'll be monitoring to make sure that we're keeping track of those youth and entering some basic information into the system on those youth. And then also we're going to monitor our comparison sites to make sure that there's no changes, significant changes in those sites, and that we're achieving enrollments as we have anticipated for those sites.
Lene, I have a question.
Yes.
This is Susan. As we're a comparison site, so are the youth that we are enrolling, are some of them already going to be open to us and already be getting services, or are these all new referrals coming in?
So that's a great question. That's something that we're going to address in our training with you all individually. So individually, I mean by our intervention sites and then our comparison sites. We have some plans on what that's going to look like. And I think that to give you an answer, that's not really an answer, but it's going to be youth moving forward. So all new youth identified and enrolled once we begin enrollments in this study, with a little asterisk by that, that we'll hear about more in our trainings.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're all on the phone. We've got everyone participating today, all of our sites. We're thrilled. So here's the map of the state that shows our phase 3 intervention and comparison sites. As you can see, we've got all of our CHAFE programs, our prior CHAFE programs involved, and represents a very wide, youth across all of the state. So we want to thank you all for being involved in this. We couldn't do it without you. And we just want you all to know that we appreciate you, and we're here to support you all in ensuring a successful phase 3 evaluation. Next slide. I'm going to try and hurry up here. I just wanted to show you that, or kind of give you an overview of what we looked at as an evaluation team and presented to our federal research partners to decide on, how did Colorado become the summative evaluation site? And, as Trevor mentioned, there was a ton of work that went into this with so many people to thank for getting us to where we are today. But what we did is to come up with our sites, when deciding on the efficacy of conducting a summative or impact evaluation, the primary question researchers ask is, are we able to enroll a sufficiently powered sample to test the impacts of the intervention against a comparison group? And so we've had to make some educated estimates or educated guess in the number of youth we felt we could enroll in this study, both from those intervention and from our comparison sites. And so we looked at trails data primarily, and we identified the number of new youth that were enrolled in CHAFE services for the years 2017 through 2019. So we just took an average of the number of new youth that you all served in your counties, in your specific counties, through CHAFE services over the last 2 years. And then we looked at that average and projected it out over the course of about 27 months of enrollment to achieve, to see what type of sample we could achieve. Sample size, I should say, how many youth we could enroll. And we think we're going to be able to enroll about 350 youth in our comparison group and just over 300 in our intervention group. I think, this is my own personal opinion, but I think we underestimated the number of youth that we can actually serve. There's a couple of reasons for that. One primarily being we've extended the age of services that we can provide to youth up to age 23. So that in and of itself will help us achieve, enrolling additional sample that's not included in this estimate. So just to give you all an idea, these are the numbers that we project to enroll across all of the sites over the course of the next couple of years of enrollments. Next slide. Another thing that we needed to look at, or another important question when coming up with intervention and comparison sites, are we able to identify a comparable group of youth that make up a comparison group? And so we wanted to look at key demographic indicators, some trails history to ensure that we have a balanced group of comparison youth with our intervention group. And so we pulled some census data, we looked at trails data primarily, and some kids count data, and we were able to show to our research, to the federal research team, that in fact, we could balance based on the demographics of the counties. We could balance on race, and we could balance on age at intake of youth. And I think the next slide also goes into, oh, and then also, does this represent the state of Colorado as a whole? So again, looking at that same data, we wanted to look at our sites and determine that how comparable our counties were in both intervention on county demographics as well. And you all have, very similar rates of poverty rates, graduation from high school rates, unemployment or employment rates, and health insurance is what we looked at. Next slide. So just to give you a high-level overview of the enrollment process, it's going to look the same for both the intervention and our comparison sites. We're going to, as I mentioned, screen all youth with our 12-item screening tool. It's just 12 yes or no questions that are going to identify a risk factor. If those youth are at increased risk of homelessness, we're going to provide them informed consent and enroll them and complete a baseline survey. The youth are going to receive a gift card incentive for enrolling in the study and completing that baseline survey. And then services will begin in our intervention sites. Our Pathways navigators will provide intervention services, and in our comparison sites, you guys will keep providing CHAPI services as you always have. Next slide. This just gives you a high-level overview of the timeline to our enrollments. So there's a lot of things that our Mathematica partners have had to accomplish over the last about year now at this point to get this study underway. They've had to get OMB clearance, they've had to get IRB approval, and we've had to develop the process for the baseline, completing the baseline survey and informed consent. So a lot of things have been happening behind the scenes that you all haven't been involved with. And I just want to first thank you all for your patience and your continued interest in participating in phase 3. We know there's been, it's been a while. The pandemic has not helped slow that process as well. So we want to thank you for your participation and your interest and your continued interest in doing this work with us. We've been working very hard in Colorado to ensure we're ready for enrollments as soon as that process is ready to begin. We anticipate that that's going to be in July. And so working towards that date, we think, we're having our kickoff today, which is kind of the beginning of the training process to the beginning of enrollment in July. So we've got our contracts out. I think I have most of them signed and back from many of you. I think there's a few sites that boards of county commissioners have to sign. So those are, we're waiting for those, but we appreciate the prompt turnaround on all of your contracts. And I know there's still a few outstanding answers that we need to resolve, but we're working on that. And I expect that those will be done in the next month at the latest, probably. And then we're going to have some trainings, as I mentioned. We're going to have one training for intervention sites, and I believe it's already scheduled. Denise, you can put it in the chat if it's scheduled. I think it is. I can't think off the top of my head. I think it's in 2 weeks. And that's going to be around May 5th, if I remember properly. But Denise will confirm that. So we've got a schedule on the books for our intervention sites. And then 2 weeks later, we're going to get a schedule comparison site training. And those trainings are really going to look at, for the intervention sites, we're going to do a deep dive into delivering that model intervention. And then for the comparison sites, we're going to talk about what it means to be a comparison site, and talk about just some basic kind of how we're going to go through that enrollment process and identification process, and then some work on the PMIS system Pathways Management Information System. So how to get in there and just enroll the youth or identify them in the system, so we know who to track for outcomes. We're going to have training again, then, as Missy mentioned, in June, to go through a deep dive into that enrollment process, how to gain informed consent, and how to complete that baseline survey. The youth will complete the baseline survey. It'll just be up to the navigator to gain that informed consent, and then the mechanism for them to give the youth the link to complete that baseline survey, and make sure they get their gift card for completing that survey. And then how the summative enrollments will begin. So next slide. So we again implementations on track for a July start to enrollments. There's a lot of trainings and communication that's going to happen between now and then with you all to get you up to speed and answer all of your questions. I want to assure you all that there will be an ongoing technical assistance call every month with the sites, one for the intervention sites and one for the comparison sites. We're going to have a kind of monthly, we call it a CQI, continuous quality improvement report, that's really going to monitor for intervention sites fidelity, and then also the enrollment process. And then it'll be a time for you all to ask and get questions answered if there's anything, related to the evaluation or just in general. Talking to each other, amongst each other, for some peer learning about how things are working for you and troubleshooting any problems that might come up at your sites. So we're going to be there to support you throughout this process. And next slide. So again, just to review what's ahead and to get sites thinking about what you can do to get prepared for the enrollments and the beginning of enrollments for phase 3. You can help by attending the trainings as they get scheduled. You can actively begin to think through youth, how you're going to identify youth and complete that screening tool to get them enrolled in the system. Could think through, are there partners in the community where you may identify additional youth to enroll in the study, that you can identify them and provide services to them. We want to make sure that you understand how to get onto the PMIS system. So that'll be part of one of the upcoming trainings, and how we just enroll that youth. It's basic information about the youth's, name, trails, ID numbers, so we can keep track of them. And then also just being consistent with your trails entry, and then ensuring that the youth contact information is always updated, both in trails and the PMIS system. And then, of course, notify CPR researchers if there's any staffing changes in your sites, or you anticipate any changes or shifts at your site with how you're delivering services. We want to be made aware of those. So I think with that, the next slides, questions and answers. I've been talking for a long time, but does anyone have any Q&A? I think while we're waiting for any chats to come up, I don't know if Nicole Kuzma in Boulder County, we were talking at a project management meeting not long ago, and she had some thoughts around moving from phase 2 to phase 3 and onboarding the sites. I don't know, Nicole, are you there?
Hi, I'm trying to be. I think I am now. Yes, I had said something really wonderful, and then our training was canceled and rescheduled for today due to the snow, and I've been trying to recreate that in my head. So I apologize if it does not. It was such a spontaneous comment about I believe about the data tracking and working towards having, more of a formal curriculum and model and approach. And I think whenever I talk about this, it's really focused at having people think and keep in mind that this is really going to address what Families First requires of states and counties to have for an evidence-based practice. And so this really lines up with where I think we're going as a state, and certainly in a lot of the counties that need to have that piece addressed and be in compliance. I think this is just such a wonderful opportunity to fill that gap in the Chafee and older, like aftercare youth and folks that are still in care, to have a service to provide that is acceptable and evidence-based. So sorry. It's what we are working towards for this space. And I think it's a really, really exciting opportunity. Again, sorry.
We appreciate the enthusiasm from your dog as well, Nicole.
Yes, he's easily excitable.
Well, thank you. Yes. And is there, oh, sorry, Trevor, go ahead.
Oh, no, there were a couple of comments in the chat that I want to touch on. And thank you, Nicole. One follow on I would say to that is, we are not evaluating whether or not Chafee services as they currently exist are good, bad, or indifferent. That's not our purpose here. We're really trying to identify whether or not Pathways consistently develops or delivers outcomes for youth that are better than what we would typically see. So I just really want to highlight that this isn't about is Chafee good or bad in Colorado. I just really need people to hear that, especially those of you in the comparison groups, the business as usual site. We know you guys work hard. We know you do an amazing job. And the evaluation is really looking at, does Pathways consistently deliver outcomes that are improved beyond what we would typically see, and identifying, are we able to develop an evidence-based program in Colorado that can serve this population? So I don't want folks to walk away from this, anyone to walk away from this feeling like we're attempting to pass judgments on traditional Chafee services. There were a couple of comments in the chat about trainings and scheduling of trainings. We generally speaking schedule further out than we are. The snowstorm definitely put a gigantic wrench in that. Originally we had scheduled, I want to say, a month or a month and a half out for this kickoff, and then a blizzard hit and we needed to cancel it. So we apologize for this hopping on your calendar shortly, or so quickly. The evaluation trainings, there will be multiple offerings throughout June, so you'll have options to pick from in that. The nuts and bolts training was everyone who is attending that should already have those invites coming their way, and we will provide additional support around that. If you're not able to attend, we'll figure something out to make sure you get the information. We apologize for the short notice for this training. It was not intended. It was the result of weather. Colorado. Yay.
Thanks, Trevor. I think we're going to jump to the youth panel now. Next slide, Drake. Now, so today we have with us Christy Townsend, who's our navigator from Phase 2 in Boulder County. Christy's been with us for a long time. I'll let Christy introduce herself, and also Will, our navigator with Shiloh House in the Northeast. Thrilled to have them all on board. And Will is joined by Herbert Crane. Christy is joined by Naomi Davis, two youth participants in Pathways. So Christy, you want to take it away?
Anyone can see us. Hi guys, can you see us,
Hi.
Lene?
Yes, I can. I can see you and I can hear you.
Fantastic. I can't see Will or Herbert.
Will, I see Will now.
I can see all three of you guys, or all four of you guys now.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
It's probably because I wasn't talking.
All right, well, hi everyone. Welcome. So my name is Christy Townsend, and I've been doing the Pathways to Success program for the past 5 years. I just saw that come up in my time hop and I was like, holy cow, it's been 5 years I've been a navigator. And I work for Boulder County. I split my time between Boulder County, the Housing and Human Services, and Attention Homes, which is now called Together. And I have with me Naomi Davis.
Hi, I'm Naomi Davis.
And she's a former Pathways youth. And then Will, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Will Wood, Shiloh House, Pathways Navigator and Independent Living Coach. Been doing this for a little over 2 years. And it's been a great joy and seeing a lot of my youth grow and become what they've become, especially this young man, Herbert Crane. You want to say hi?
Hello, guys. Sorry, I just woke up. I'm a little tired, so long night last night.
You're all good. Thanks for joining us, though, Herbert.
No problem.
So we're going to kind of jump in. We have a few questions for the two youth that are with us. And then if we have some folks that are on the call that want to ask specific questions to Naomi or Herbert, or even to Will and I about our experiences with Pathways, we'll have some little bit of time for that. So we're going to kind of jump right in, and I'm going to ask Naomi first. How was your experience with Pathways been?
I would say that my experience with Pathways has been really successful. Obviously, I think that we get along really well, and so I think that was paired well. And over the last year, you've helped me get like a lot of things together. And like recently, my car got broken into, my birth certificate and social security card got stolen, and so like I don't know who to text about that, and so it's nice to have somebody to text about it and stuff. So I would say it's been really nice.
Awesome. Herbert, how about you? How about your experience with Pathways? How has it been?
I've been with the program for a little bit longer. So for me, it's been successful, but at the same time, it's been kind of around the place since I've been through 3 different navigators. The first 2 kind of just left, and I really never even knew why. So since I've gotten Will, though, we're currently getting me into an apartment, which we've been trying to kind of do for years. But with the change of navigators, that's been difficult. And I'm finally getting to a place where I'm not hustling as much or as needing really as much help as I used to back when this first started. So I'd say overall, it's still been successful.
Awesome. Thanks, Herbert. You want to go, Will?
Yeah. So Naomi, I'll ask you first, I guess this one. What has been the most beneficial thing about Pathways for you?
I would just say most like the relationship and stuff, because I think a lot of other programs too, like Herbert had said, they just leave, or like the connection's not there because like, you know, they're either doing it for like volunteering or like it's not coming from like a genuine place. And so it's hard to like make a real connection. And with this, like it's her job and stuff. And this is something that like she cares about. And so it's very like obvious that it's made it really easy to like talk to. So
I'd have to agree with that.
Anything else you want to add, Herbert?
No, she pretty much hit on the same thing I was going to say if you had asked me the question. So there's really, it's hard to bounce off of that, to be honest.
Herbert, can I ask you a different one?
Yeah, that's fine.
Anything you would change about Pathways since you've been kind of around for a little bit? Anything that you've noticed maybe that
the only thing I really had a big problem with, like I said before, is the navigator switch. Back when that first happened, I had absolutely no clue what happened. I was just told, I think the day before, that Cameron was leaving and Chelsea was coming in. And then when Chelsea came in, she didn't know much about the situation of what we were trying to work on, so we kind of had to restart. And nothing really happened until Will came in. So that's really the only big problems I've had. So, but since Will's been here and working with me, it's been flying off the handle, and we've been getting it going. So
awesome. Thanks for being honest. Naomi, anything you would change?
I because it's only been a year and you're my only person, there's really nothing that I can say that I would want to change. You've pretty much checked all my boxes.
Okay. Let's see. Herbert, how's your navigator focus on your specific goals? So maybe think about just with you and Will recently. How is he like focused on your specific goals?
How do I word this? So back when Will and I first started, like I said, we kind of were had to restart kind of some stuff. So over the last 2 years, when we first started communicating and everything, I'm still in some sticky spots. So he'll text me, even if he hasn't heard from me, he'll call me just to see how I've been and stuff. So that's been really nice, as well as he's been trying to figure out what I need specifically, even though he has a bunch of other people he talks to. And he's kind of pushed stuff around, moved stuff around to either come up to Greeley or do what he needs to do to kind of help us out and help me out. So specifically to Will, that's been the good things.
Awesome. What about you? Do you want to answer that question? How has your navigator focused on your specific goals?
I would say that,
be honest,
when we first met, the big thing was like talking about what I need. And so I would say, I just saw like the question that popped up. So I would say that I set the goals, because it's very like based on like the things that I need. And last year I was moving out of my foster home and trying to find a place to live before college and stuff. And so like you helped me get the extra funding so that I could pay rent and stuff. And so that was like really, and that was something that I needed right then. And then now we're working on like getting my stuff from Social Security and other things like that. And so I would say that she does a really good job at just checking in with like the things that I need, and I'm very aware of what I need, so it makes it easy.
I can bounce off of what Bob had just put. It's definitely me who sets the goals when it comes to, is it me or the navigator? But at times, if I have something, that I want to set as a goal, there's been a couple times where Will said, hey, let's get this done first. So he in a way, he's kind of changed that goal, and but it still came out that we got that first and then my goal later on, and I still hit that goal. So like my current goal now is getting the apartment we're applying for. So originally there was a bunch of other goals back before. It was always getting a car, getting my license, and a bunch of other stuff. So with all that, it's definitely us who sets the goals, but the navigators can influence that just a little bit to help us reach it faster and easier.
Cool. Thank you, Herbert, for adding. I'll go with you, Naomi. How is Pathways maybe different from any other services you've had in your life?
Well, in the past, like I was originally trying to get set up with Chafee when I first like re-entered the program again at 16. And I like met with somebody, and then I met with another random person, and then I filled out this like survey, and then nothing ever happened. And so it was like very confusing and very like just not obviously like attuned to me and what I needed at that time and stuff. So this is definitely a program, and like the foster care system in general is not a great program. And I've had a lot of issues like within there and the rules within there and stuff. So I would say this is definitely, because it's focused on like trying to get us like the next step of life and like how to like, I think it's probably the most positive program I've been part of.
Awesome. Thanks, Naomi. Herbert?
So this is really it that I remember the only program I've been in. So, but I agree with the I agree with the foster care thing. I was in there for like 2 days. I couldn't do it no more. So
awesome. Well, I appreciate you both for being here and taking part in answering these questions. I don't know if there's any kind of questions in the chat. We've seen them pop up, but if anyone has any questions that they want to add.
There was one that just came through.
Yeah, I'm trying to scroll and find it because they disappeared on me.
Yeah, I can read it. I can read it if that's easier. So what would be helpful if a navigator has to change out to another? So this situation you were saying.
I would definitely say the communication between the outgoing and incoming. I'm not exactly sure how that went with Chelsea into Will, but I know multiple times Chelsea didn't know what was going on when it went from camera to FOIA to her. So we kind of had to restart, and I had to re-explain and go over. I think I was with Cameron for a year and a half. So there's a year and a half of information, some of it I remember, some of it I didn't remember, and goals we were trying to set. And then the fact of 2 different people, they have 2 different styles of doing things. So that's always a little bit harder, trying to get to know the new navigator and anything like that. It's kind of, I guess, communication is the key in a lot of things. So any tips or advice for new navigators? I don't know how to answer that one right now. If you got anything, Naomi, let me think on that one.
I would probably say like the best thing that you could do is like be really genuine in your interactions, because especially like kids that are coming from the system or like already coming from a harder time can really like tell when you don't want to be there and like it's just your job and you don't like it and stuff. And I think that adds to how much I want to share and how much like and stuff. And so I just think that's like the biggest thing.
Yeah, and everybody's different on that side of stuff too. Oh, I think you just went dark. There you go.
Sorry. And I would have to agree with Naomi too. I mean, just from sitting as a navigator, I think it's just really being authentic is a big part of it. I think Will would probably agree.
Yeah, 100%. When I first met with Herbert, I told him right off the bat, I'm a straight shooter and I'm going to tell you how it is. And he's like, perfect. That's exactly the person I'm looking for to help me right now.
I don't like stuff sugar coated, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Can I ask you guys, how was your first interaction with your navigator?
Oh man, I don't even remember that.
Yeah.
That was so long ago.
We probably met at Starbucks.
Even go with
Yeah, we definitely met at Starbucks.
interaction.
I
Starbucks
honestly
has been
don't
helpful.
remember exactly where I met Will or where the first time we actually met was. I just, I don't know. We've been communicating and stuff so often, and for I guess having a good time. I don't know how to word that properly, but yeah, I don't know how to word that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would have to say our first
I haven't had my
interaction was very
coffee.
positive.
I would say it's positive. I'm still, I guess, doing good. We're still moving along towards the goal. So, but I can't remember honestly the first interaction we had exactly. So, and Bob, the answer to your question is yes, that would probably be great. I know when it went from Cameron to Chelsea for me, I had absolutely no knowledge of it until the day before he left the program to do whatever he was gonna do. So. So we're was that Leanne? Is that how you say his name?
Lene, yeah. What was Lene's
Lene.
question?
She says, can you describe how often and where you typically meet with your navigator? So COVID has kind of changed that a lot. So a lot of it's over the phone now. I think since COVID started, Will and I have met maybe a handful of times, whether he's bringing me something or we're looking at apartments recently. That's been what it was, but mostly it's all by phone now. Before that, it was different with each navigator I had specifically. Cameron and I would meet at Starbucks, so a favorite of them, obviously. Chelsea and a couple of us others would meet at a library in like some of those study rooms that they have up here in the Greeley libraries. And then Will and I met at, what is that, Will? I don't know exactly the name for that.
It's called the Housing Navigation Center in Greeley.
And that's
Way hosts it.
And that's where we've been meeting pretty much from the start of where he's found out where to do drop-ins and pre-COVID. So.
And I think we meet here a lot.
Yeah, we meet in the car a lot.
We're here in the car. Definitely pre-COVID. We do a lot of Starbucks. We would sit outside a lot, her and I.
She does do phone calls, but we do try to meet in person.
Mm-hmm. A lot at Starbucks, a lot. I got to be honest.
But I think it's a little bit harder for Will too, just being that I'm 60 miles north of him.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. Yeah, and she drives around like crazy. So
I am in DU right now, which is, there is a little bit of flexibility with Pathways. I think that, we kind of touched on about when I first started that we could kind of follow youth for a little bit when they cross a county line, which I think has been really beneficial. Over my 5 years, I've been able to do that a handful of times. And it's been really amazing for me to be able to follow a youth to Brighton in Adams County while he was there for a few months, or Naomi, who's down here at DU. I, can come down once a month now and see her. Being able to do that has allowed me a flexibility to stay connected with youth, I think in a really good way.
Do you want me to read out Mark's question for you guys?
Sure.
Okay. What keeps you motivated to continue to participate in the program? Is there anything we can do better?
Well, for me, I know it keeps me motivated is definitely like the genuine like connection that we have and like relationship that we have. And because like coming out of the foster care system, I obviously don't have those like parental relationships in place. And so like things when my birth certificate gets stolen or something happens and I don't really know how to handle it, I at least have somebody who's like competent and knows like can handle it and stuff. So that keeps me motivated.
And what keeps me motivated has always just been, I grew up in a really rough part of town with a really rough family. So I want to get to the point where I do better for my family, my kids, everything like that when I do have them. And I don't put them in the same situation I was in. That's my final goal, is to not put myself, others, and my family in the same position I was put in, and try to help everybody else do the same, because it's been a rough ride, not gonna lie, but we're getting there.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
And on the doing better stuff, right now that's a hard question to answer, especially with COVID and everything, because everything is restricted. So right now I would say I would not answer that until after COVID is done.
Okay, if there's no more questions, I think that's about it. Herbert, I appreciate you being here. Appreciate the honesty that you've brought to the table. And same with Naomi, I appreciate you being able to make it on the short notice of you getting your first vaccine.
Yep, thank you. It was very tight.
Yeah, thanks, Herbert.
No problem.
If there's nothing else, I think we'll pass it along.
Yeah. And this is just a quote we just kind of wanted to leave up for you guys to read before we kind of went to the next slide. And I believe Lene is taking it over again.
Yeah, actually, I think I'm going to hand it to Denise. Thank you again, Will, Christy, Herbert, Naomi. We really appreciate your input and feedback on the program. And I know that our new navigators, as well as our Chiefy workers, appreciate hearing your perspective. So thanks, everybody.
All righty. Thank you guys very much for spending your afternoon with us. We are really excited to have this opportunity to work with each and every one of you in your respective roles and sites and getting through the summative evaluation. It's a big thing, and it's a big forward step, as I said before, really not just for Colorado, but for the nation as a whole, and our ability to create evidence that proves whether or not this works. There will be additional training coming on its way. We will get that out as soon as possible. If you are not aware of what's next, let me know. I believe Denise has been sending emails out frantically over the last month or so. You'll see on the screen contact information for each of us, as well as the Pathways to Success website that's hosted on the Center for Policy Research's site. Lots of great reading there. It's research reading, but even at research reading, it's
digestible, Trevor. It's digestible, Trevor.
That's what I was about to say. It doesn't put me right to sleep.
It's read the research briefs. You don't need to get into the full final report unless you really want to.
We really appreciate you. And what am I missing, Denise, Lene?
The survey.
The survey.
The evaluation survey is in the chat. If people could please take it, because we're going to have a lot more training. So it helps us to deliver a training that is relevant and appropriate. So
thank you, everyone. We really appreciate you taking the time today to stay with us and learn about phase 3. And we're thrilled to have everyone on board.